Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Slay with Zay, and I am your trans tutor. So this is episode number 9, 10 of a series. We're almost at the end, So we are almost there. So I want to make sure that you guys are asking questions, definitely prompting me and asking me questions about things that are confusing or whatever the case may be. Make sure you leave comments below, comments, and or questions. But since this is number 9, we're just going to do a small little recap of transgender history today. Transgender history. Now, there are lots of civilizations that we can go over. We're going to try to keep it in America because I'm in America and most people probably listening to this are in America too. So we're going to try to keep it all consolidated into one small section of America. So we're going to start at the beginning-ish, even though we've been here for the longest. And we're going to expand all the way up until today. So let's go. Transgender history. Okay, so let's start off with our very first person from the 1300s. Yes, we existed in the 1300s. Even before that, but we're going to start in the 1300s with ELEANOR RYKENER. So she was someone who discovered their trans identity well into her teen years, and then she decided she wanted to pursue things that traditional women would do at that time period. So she became an embroiderer, and she became a barmaid. And of course, the best way for women to make money back then, of course, was to be a sex worker. So again, we are sex positive on this channel. So she did what she needed to do in order to get her money. Unfortunately, we don't know very much about her because, like most things that trans people go through, we are dead named and misgendered. So dead naming, of course, is when they use your old or previous name that you no longer go by. And then misgendering is, of course, calling you the different pronouns that are not who you are any longer. So we don't have that much information about her, and that's because of dead naming and misgendering. So in order for those things to stop, we have to use the correct name and the correct pronouns that person goes by. The second person I want to talk about is Lucy Hicks Anderson. And so she worked as a domestic after she discovered her trans identity as well. And she actually got married twice. So people love us, trans people. They love us. So she got married twice. On her second marriage, she ended up running a brothel because, again, the best way for sex workers to get their money is at a brothel, and women knew how to make their money back then. Of course, this brothel with her husband ended up getting a case of disease found out there because they weren't being safe exactly. So in 1945, they went through and they scoured and they figured out that she was in fact a trans woman. So the marriage that she had with her husband was taken away from her. They were separated and such and so forth. And it was because of how the rules and the regulations of how you should present were done at the time. So she said with very clear conviction that I defy any doctor in the world to prove that I am not a woman. Just like in the previous episodes I've stated, transgender people know exactly who they are, and she knows no less of who she is as well. So be mindful of that as we continue to go through how people know who they are and continue to pursue their passions in the same way as she did. Okay, so next we're going to talk about a trans masculine person. We're going to talk about Alan L. Hart. He's most known for spearheading the programs that are going to help us use X-rays to discover tuberculosis. Very pinnacle in his work. However, through his work, he found trials and tribulations as he was a professor and a teacher. So some of his students ended up outing him, and everyone found out that he was a trans-masculine person, as opposed to the female gender he was assigned previously. So he had to depart from his current work. However, even though he went through all that, there were major successes in his work through the tuberculosis X-ray program that he spearheaded. Moving forward, we're going to go into someone very popular in that same time period. In the early 1920s, we encountered Christine Jorgensen. So her entire life, she felt as though she was the woman that she was always supposed to be as well. So upon graduation from high school, she was drafted into World War II. However, she ended up leaving the army in an attempt to continue to be herself. So, in 1950, she traveled to Denmark to see an endocrinologist by the name of Dr. Christian Hamburger. And she stayed there for 2 years and underwent hormone replacement therapy, some of the first experimental works of its kind. And upon her return back to the United States, she got notoriety all over the country. She was even on the cover of the New York Daily News. Huge deal, a trans person on the New York Daily News back in those times. However, word got out that she hadn't undergone any SRS or sexual reassignment surgery. So, unfortunately, the masses got wind of this and said that she's no longer a woman because she hasn't undergone all those things, as women are naturally supposed to have ovaries and a vagina. So, 1954, she underwent a vaginoplasty surgery, also known as an SRS, sexual reassignment surgery. So, unfortunately, the masses kind of accepted her, but then following that, she had to depart and kind of go into seclusion and hide herself to protect herself. She unfortunately died of lung cancer. But her notoriety spread word across the United States, and trans people had a small movement at that point in time. All right, so now we're going to talk about two very powerful and instrumental Black trans women. The first we're going to talk about is Sir Lady Java. Yes, I did say Sir. It added mystique and magic to who she is. Sir Lady Java was a female impersonator who eventually came to the likely understanding of her trans experience. So she did performances and shows. She cited Mae West and Lena Horne as some of her inspirations in her performances. She was also an exotic dancer. So much to the point where she got to work with people such as Sammy Davis Jr. and Red Fox. So actually, she got hired to work at Red Fox's club in LA. However, the police got wind of this, and in October 21st, the police came in, and under rule number 9, people aren't allowed to dress in the opposite sex attire. So they invaded the club and took her hostage because she broke the rules on a day where she was picketing that same exact rule to be broken. Very powerful, instrumental, fighting for her right just to exist and perform and do what she loves. And of course, we can't forget the great and powerful MARSHA P. Johnson, or MARSHA Pay It No Mind Johnson. And she's credited with the beginning of the Stonewall Inn riots in 1969. The reason that we even have Pride celebrations in June, of course. So she, of course, was in this bar performing, living her life, and the police came in, of course, under the same principles that people should be wearing the appropriate attire assigned to their gender. So when she wasn't, they decided to fight back. The Black and brown Latinx trans women and the queer gender non-conforming people were the ones who fought back, giving us the pride that we have today. So she was in charge and a part of the STAR, which stands for Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, where they worked and raised money to give food and homes to trans youth. Unfortunately, she was murdered, more than likely due to her activism. So, at a cost, being murdered, being arrested, all of these things are part of our history in an effort to surely be exactly who we are. Is it worth it? As it progresses, we'll find out. All right, so next we're going to talk about 3 very important women of today's current transgender experience. First, we're going to talk about CANDIS CAYNE. So, CANDIS CAYNE was a dancer, choreography, and performer in the New York nightlife in the 90s. She eventually became a very powerful actress and got reoccurring roles. Most importantly, she got the reoccurring role on the show Dirty Sexy Money in the early 2000s. So, very pinnacle moment for a trans person to have a reoccurring role on a hit television show. In addition to that, we have to, of course, talk about CAITLYN Jenner. Now, although her politic may be a little questionable, and she may be a very interesting kind of person, what she did and what she revolutionized for transgender people is very important. So, because of the Kardashian and because of the gender brand that it is now, it's very important what she did. Her name has so much gravity from her previous life and her previous name that everyone has to know exactly who she is and what she's going through. So the notoriety of her name permeated. When she changed her name and changed and identified herself again as the woman that she is, everyone knew about it. Even people who didn't know anything about transgender people before had to know about it. The power and the magnitude of the Jenner Kardashian name is so powerful. So again, her politics questionable, but who she is and what she offered is very, very important. And of course, the legendary, the beautiful, still with us, Laverne Cox. So she grew up again and went, much like Candice, came into the early New York nightlife where she was a dancer, a performer, and all of those fun things. Eventually making it to screen and stage, notably on, of course, the hit Netflix series Orange is the New Black, where she was the first trans person that's open to be nominated for an Emmy. She has done major work since then and also was on the cover of 2014 Times Magazine, the first trans person to be on the cover of Times. So in this trans revolution or renaissance we're living through currently, it's important to look back to see all the work that was done before so that we can enjoy the things that we're having right now. However, we're not done. We're going to talk about one more very important person. All right, so for the very last person we're going to talk about this most recent election in 2020. We made transgender history with Sarah McBride. She is the first transgender senator that has ever been elected into that office. She's the senator of Delaware at this point now. So hopefully we can see how all of the work, all the struggles, all the things that took place, being arrested, being murdered, all of those things have culminated into the existence of who we are, but has helped push us and to strive for greater things such as a Senate seat. So because of her, we can now have legislation that can possibly reach out and protect transgender people. We learned in the last episode about statistics, and we definitely need someone on our side in these higher positions of power to aid us in the fight to be exactly who we are and to have the freedoms and liberties that cis heterosexual people have. So before it's time to go, I just want to make sure we review some of these people. ELEANOR RYKENER, Alan L. Hart, Sir Lady Java, MARSHA P. Johnson, CANDIS, CAYNE, Laverne Cox, and of course, Sarah McBride. Look up more people that are outside of these people I have listed. There's a whole lot of trans history to go through. I don't have hours and hours to give to you guys, but make sure you look up this information. So, thank you so much for joining me on episode number 9, Transgender History of Slay with Zay. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you're sharing the content and using hashtag Slay with Zay. And I will see you all on another episode, which will be the last episode of this season of Slay with Zay. Bye.